Okay. We'll do roll call.
I hear someone else coming. Ready, sir? Julie McDonald. Here. Hannah Bezanet. Here. Jim C.
Here.
Millie Schoonover.
Here.
Michael Capitan. Chanel McKinley.
You got two to run.
Timothy O'Connor.
Here.
Thank you, council.
Okay. Starting in with consent agenda.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on, hearing from the public. Public comment. Don't have none? Nobody on the phone?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving on, ordinance number 738, setting the utility rates. Is that later on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Reports from the mayor, who's been busy fishing and fixing electronics, fighting fires. Everybody, don't back your trucks up to the fire burn pit, would you? We've had 2 of them in a month catch fire. One of them towed, so let's not be doing that. I put fire extinguishers out there around the gate, so hopefully that'll curtail some of that maybe. The administrator.
I have a written report in the packet and number of items inside on the agenda, so I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any on the report side.
Any questions for John?
A question, not on the report, but we talked about the invitation of the state forester. Was we able to talk to them possibly?
I've not called them yet, but just a matter of my getting it scheduled.
Okay, I'm just no hurry. I was curious, so it's nice and something.
I've got the public notice of his appointment on my desk as a reminder to call.
Sort of on your report, but you mentioned 4th of July. If I can't get this thing to cooperate. Yes, you mentioned the 4th of July on here. And I did have one concern about the 4th of July. And that is I didn't do anything. They did such an amazing job. I think we might have set the bar too high for future years. Because I heard so many comments about the 4th of July, and it was the best year ever. And it was awesome. And then also there were some people there from Juneau that I met at the fishing derby, and they were all complimenting our, I don't know if they're called, Hans, the rescue ladders or whatever they're called. They said in Juneau they've been petitioning for them and still don't have them. So got a lot of positive feedback all the way around.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Hi, Chanel.
Hey.
Okay, we'll move on to the treasurer.
I submitted a written report. Do you have to answer any questions?
Any questions for the manager? None? Okay. Aquatic manager.
She's excused tonight, Mr. Mayor. I think she's either returning from Anchorage or just returned from certified pool operator training.
Okay. City clerk.
Council, I added in all of the terms and expirations so that everyone could have notice on who's expiring and who's not. And I included a notice of open seats looks like the mayor is up for a 2-year term on the city council. Now that we have seat designations, we have seat C up for a 3-year term. We have seat D up for a 3-year term. We have our school board. We have 2 seats there. And for anyone who's wanting to get their feet wet and try it out, there's a 1-year term available. And then the other is a full 3-year term. Declaration of candidacy forms are available July 29th. Filing opens at 8 a.m. on August 6th, and that's here at City Hall. And all candidacy forms must be submitted to City Hall no later than 5 p.m. on September 3rd, 2021. Thank you.
Questions? City planner.
I submitted a written report, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the planner? Fire and EMS coordinator.
I have also submitted a report available for questions.
Questions for Minnie?
Quick one, what did Dr. Kohler think?
Right from the very start, she has been impressed. When she came down this last trip, she spent time with our 2 new EMTs that work in the office with me and did some training and teaching and signing them off. She's hoping to be back here real soon this summer.
Good.
She has our trauma policies written up, which also would cover us for ALS and COVID. So there is stuff getting done. It still has to get submitted to the state.
Good. Glad it's going well. Thank you.
Good one. Okay, moving on, harbor master.
Mr. Mayor, I've submitted a written report, but would be happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Do you know the measurements of that long line drum down in the wet block?
No, but I can get them for you. I did talk to him about it, and
He called
I
me
gave him
today.
Okay.
I gotta go measure and see how wide it is. I think it's too big anyway. Anything else for Mr. Hans? Are you gonna auction off the Deliverance or any of them? Or try to?
We don't want it coming back to us, and so we're trying to figure out a disposal method for that vessel. We just don't want it ending up as another derelict liveaboard.
Yeah,
We have enough of those, and
most of
we're
guys
trying
actually
to do away with that, so.
thinking they can convert it to a thrower. Yeah.
We have one up for auction right now, the Summer Wind. And that, we relisted that one, and it ends on the 28th of this month. So,
What's it got for engines in it?
Twin Perkins, I think. But it's rough.
Pretty rough.
Are they 4 108s or 6 332s?
Don't know.
She won't go in there and look.
I need a Tyvek suit to go in there to look. So.
Oh,
I have some in the fire.
can they borrow them?
You may have to go in there. Anyway, the gesture will be worse. Okay, library. Do we have a librarian? There she is.
I'm hiding.
Hmm.
I've submitted a written report and would be happy to answer any questions. We're getting busy, not like summers before COVID, but getting close. So that's been kind of cool. It's a little bit panic inducing when a lot of people start crowding in the library, but the new arrangement's working out well, so that's been good.
Just curious to see if you've upgraded the Wi-Fi Is that something that's available to people if they, like in the late evening, if they park outside?
Yeah, the Wi-Fi's on 24/7. There's a program that we are part of through the state that automatically tracks all of our usage for us. So we used to have people sign in anytime they use the Wi-Fi so we could keep count of the numbers. But now the state does that for us. So our passwords are posted and it's on 24/7. Our router goes down randomly every once in a while, but other than that, it's always available.
More questions? Okay. Police Chief, RJ.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, I submitted a report. I'll add one quick thing, for CDL road testing. We might be able to offer it as soon as next week. If not, I'm hoping that by August 1st, Travis Tuttle will be able to offer that service to the public. I think we've got 8 or 9 people already that are inquiring for that. But we are really, really close, and as soon as we're able to offer that service, we'll make sure it gets posted up. Other than that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That's good news. Any
Yeah,
questions?
there's a big push for, everybody wants the motorcycle test as well, but there's no way to physically get that done until I think it's May or June of next year. It's only offered once a year. So the goal is to get that accomplished next year.
Okay. Better hurry, John's buying a Harley. Thanks, RJ. Public Works.
Yep, Mark submitted a written report that is dated as required. If you have any questions concerning that report, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions?
Garbage trucks, excuse me, your garbage truck is on order, any date when it's supposed to arrive?
Probably mid-October.
Just in time for the Bears to get thick. Any more questions? And Recreation.
I did submit a written report, but we just finished our soccer sign up. I'm just amazed at how many little kids we had out there. It was fantastic. They were wild and crazy, and it's a good start to the program. We're gonna be playing Mondays and Wednesdays at 4:30. We're gonna try opening the youth center on Friday, and we're also gonna start skating again on Friday at 7:30, so lots of fun stuff happening. Any questions?
You got room for Clinton in there on the skating or what?
Well, we can have cane races. I don't know, I might win.
Probably you might.
I have not this in a cane,
Huh?
not a cane.
Those are nice, I like those.
People.
But I only have one arm, so I can't do that.
It's a walker.
Don't forget, I have a wheel walker. I'm ready to go. For Millie, for Victoria.
Oh, my knee is healed and I can move my arm 15 degrees now. Yay.
Well, that's good to hear.
Well, okay, my knee's almost healed. It spins a little. Oh my God.
All right. Parks and Public Facilities. Doug?
Mr. Mayor, there was a written report in the packet, yeah.
Any questions on that report, you guys? Okay, we'll move on to reading correspondence. Anything there anybody wishes to bring up?
Mr. Mayor, I have stayed in touch with Allison Weinmiller. We're still looking for employees, or at least one, to try to get a sufficient staffing level to sustain. And I'll stay in touch with her.
The whole town's looking for people. And I mean, banks at halftime, or half hours, and JS shut down, and it's all due to employees lack of. I don't know if it's because of the escalated unemployment money or what it is. But they can't find people. Interesting.
Could I comment on that part of it?
Yes.
So, today, Sea Alaska Corporation reached out to me and wanted an incentive program for employees, and I never got the chance to talk to John earlier today, but there's an incentive-based program. Sea Alaska will pay new employees certain amounts of money for starting a job, 6 months, 9 months, a year. And I gladly back with the city on that stuff. The city of Heidelberg has done it with the tribe and Heidelberg and Heidelberg Corporation.
Be good to get somebody in there to see and maybe the bank.
It's just not to interrupt, just seen it late today.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they had a similar program there a couple of years ago.
Is there a contact name?
That was from Matt Carl. I could forward you the email.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any questions on any of that?
See, with the reading of correspondence, we've got a letter from, the daycare, they're struggling with people, so it's a potential candidate that, certainly worthy if we could figure out how to make it keep going. I just, I see that if this goes away, there's certain services they're able to provide, being a licensed facility and some of the flexibilities they have that someday, there's gonna be somebody in need of those kinds of maybe extra special levels of care or service that won't be provided here. I just hate to see that go away, but, it may, but it's a candidate for what Clinton just suggested potentially.
Absolutely, because a lot of people that are getting assistance you have to have a licensed facility to get assistance too. So that's a huge problem.
Did you get any update from her? And this is dated a couple weeks ago now, any updates?
I exchanged an email with her last night and this morning. She said that they had scheduled a candidate for interviews, but that candidate had canceled twice. So there was some doubt as to whether or not that would pan out. The ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan Act, which is the latest iteration of the COVID response, latest federal legislation, does have a number of provisions regarding childcare services. And so one option would be for the council to consider using some of its ARPA money, none of which we have yet, to offer some sort of inducement of some sort to try to sweeten the pot, I guess, for the childcare center to offer better terms or somehow attract employees. And I was going to bring a briefing on ARPA money to the council next meeting anyway, so may include that as one of the options for you to consider, and perhaps take some action on.
Yeah. Okay, consideration of resolution and ordinances, ordinance number 738, setting the utility rates.
Move to adopt ordinance number 738.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt ordinance number 738, setting utility rates. Go for discussion.
It's beautiful, oh, sorry.
What?
I said it's beautiful.
Oh, okay.
I know there's a lot of work goes into this stuff. It takes a lot of time looking at that to kind of sort it out. So for people that did put the effort and time in, I appreciate it. And, hopefully it helps us maintain our levels of revenue and as we provide services and kind of equally spread across the board.
Russell worked pretty hard on it. Know that. Okay. Go ahead, we'll do a roll call vote.
Hannah Bessonette,
Yes.
Nellie Schoonover,
Yes.
Michael Campbell,
Yes.
Julie McDonald,
Yes.
Chanel McKinley,
Yes.
Jim C.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, Russell was a great foundation for this work, and I was helped mightily as well by Sherry's efforts to incorporate it into how the building would work, so kudos to both of them.
It was very fortuitous on that. Unfinished business, Craig land sales discussion, Title 16.
Well, Mr. Mayor, there's a long memo in the packet. This goes back to November. There was the AT&T land sale was up for consideration. The council asked at the time to have a further discussion on Title 16 before moving forward with that. So recently, the council approved a sale of some tidelands to Rodney Payne. The AT&T land sale is still unresolved. And there's currently an application for a purchase of residential land that's owned by the city. So it's definitely a current issue, and I don't have any specific recommendations, but based on the council's desire to have a conversation about it, I wanted to give a short background on Title 16 on the leasing and sale process, answer any questions that council members have, and take any direction that the council has moving forward, whether it's a direction that we can act within the current ordinances or direction that would cause us to bring an ordinance draft back to the council for consideration.
Any discussion on this, council?
I would refer to the sale of the tidelands, and that I like the suggestion, and Jim kind of led it, but when we have an assessment made, and, we get into some of our land here is not always still valued at appropriate levels, adding a reasonable percentage, or I'm comfortable with pursuing that and supporting it if that under some of their terms.
Brian, have they approached us about buying this land before?
But who, AT&T?
Yeah.
The AT&T request, sorry, I don't remember when it started, but it would have been probably July or August of last year that they would have sent their original request in. And by the time we process it and get it to the council in ordinance format, it was in November when the council heard the ordinance on the issue and postponed it pending this discussion.
Right, have they approached the city about purchasing it before, like years past?
I don't recall ever having that discussion with AT&T.
Okay.
The current residential land, is that one of the lots that we've had advertised for a long time?
Yes. Yeah, they're not currently advertised, but they're part of the subdivision that we sold lots out of in 2017.
So pretty much, the way I read this, we can end up doing what we did with the last thing and without changing the ordinance, right? We can just have the discussion and decide on the percentages for the different things, and then, of course, the council has the right to change that again later. A different council or whatever, that's what I'm reading from this, and that's what we discussed last time too, right?
Municipal code allows the council to set a rate higher than market value appraisal. There was some discussion at the last time, and I'll remind the council of the discussion. So for the last several years, the council has generally stuck pretty close to the appraised value on properties. And because of that, we have pushed the upfront expense of the appraisals off onto the applicants, since there was some fairly guaranteed range of what they would be paying based on the appraisal. So part of it, I guess, would depend on when the council wants to consider adding a value. The appraisal doesn't happen until after the council approves the ordinance. And so the appraisal process, the appraisals take part later in the process. And so at this point, we're generally making the applicant pay for those up front. They usually run $2,000 or $3,000. If there's more inconsistency or more question in the value that the council wants to put on it, so if the council wants to see those appraisals before setting some premium, then you may want to think about the city paying for those up front again, since again, we've kind of taken some of that consistency away from what the applicants see up front. But all of that, the added value is all allowed under the current code. It can be done either on a blanket format where the council decides it just wants to add some premium percentage to all sales or to sales of certain types of land, or we even have that discussion with each individual sale as part of the ordinance discussion.
Like, we could decide we're gonna do 20% on this and 15% on that, and then the people would know upfront when they applied to buy it, that it's gonna be this much above whatever your appraisal says, if we agree to the appraisal.
We place covenants on there to get people to clean up those leases or keep them clean when we sell them.
We can. It's not unusual to put covenants on property. Some covenants are easier to enforce over the long run than others, but covenants are a normal part of land sales.
And leases?
Well, leases are a little different because ultimately we still own the property. And so under leases, we have more control over those things because we can essentially impose a term on a leaseholder. And if they decide that they don't want to comply with the term, then we have a lot of options open to us, including terminating the lease. On a sale, it's a little bit different because the property is no longer ours. So we can work to enforce covenants, but we don't have the same recourse that we do on leases.
Any more to be discussed on this?
Yeah, my suggestion, or my interpretation of this is we have the flexibility that we're to do what we have done and what we may consider doing in the future with our present code, so I guess I wouldn't see a reason to change our policy or our code.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I'm wondering if we should set, if we want the people to continue being the ones who pay for the appraisals, then they should have a pre-notice of what our premium is above the appraisal price, is kind of what we're talking about, right? Otherwise, we're gonna be paying for the appraisals.
We can direct staff to give them a notice of that they have to pay for the appraisal as well as the 15% premium that.
For, yeah, either 15 or 20, or whatever we decide in advance, so that people know. Is that?
We can give them that direction when, I can certainly let applicants know that council is likely to impose a premium on the appraised price. And then once they're notified that the council has approved an ordinance authorizing the sale, the council has settled on a premium. At that point in time, I can let the applicants know. Of course, the appraisal is usually happens several months after that at the earliest. So the council won't know what the appraised value is until after someone has paid for an appraisal. But we can let the applicants know that there is likely to be some premium charged on top of the appraised value. And the council has a couple of opportunities to set that premium. One opportunity before the appraisal takes place. And then the council still reserves the right to set the final terms, which include the price of the sale or lease.
So there's no real need to change that code then, you know. Anybody else? Anything? You got direction on that then, without voting, or do you need to vote on it, or?
So I'm understanding the discussion, the council is kind of directing us to conduct business as usual in terms of applications. And the council can take the opportunity at the approval of the ordinance process to set some premium rate, or can take the opportunity when the final terms are brought back to the council to add value to the sale or lease after the appraisal.
Okay.
Do we need to clear the AT&T stuff?
I can simply bring the ordinance back to the council at the next meeting for consideration and let the council go through this very process.
We can do that. Yeah. Moving on to Cannery property, Great Cannery property, Harbor Development.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So a memo on the packet, including some recommendations. In short, the city needs to continue coordinating its planning and financing efforts with regard to the developing the cannery property. The packet memo summarizes some of the financing and planning timing and tasks that need to be completed. When the council met last, the legislature had authorized a $4.4 million appropriation for the project, which was subsequently vetoed by the governor. So that takes what would have been a very smooth path and makes it a little bit more complicated, but certainly not out of reach. And in other respects, things are moving ahead. Senator Murkowski, as you can see in the packet, has submitted a directed spending request to the chairs, to the ranking member and the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, seeking a $30 million appropriation for the federal costs on the project, the costs incurred by the Corps, which, as the council's aware, is 80% of the breakwater project costs. We saw the list. It's on the top of the list. It's quite a commitment and a boost by Senator Murkowski in support of the project. And despite the veto, in my conversations with staff at the governor's office and the legislature, there's support in both branches of government for the project. And while nothing's likely to happen in the special legislative session that begins in early August, there is some momentum behind some state money coming in 2022 from the legislative session. Now I think it's more likely than not, but there's certainly no assurance that any funding will come at all from the state. It's looking cautiously positive at this point. And as I said, what we really need to do is continue coordinating our planning and financing efforts. Talking with Brian and discussing our conversations with the Corps, it's unlikely that the city will be asked for any sort of a capital outlay, cash payment to the Corps for the city share before the first quarter of 2022, which still leaves 6 months or so to do some more planning and site work, which, as you know from reading the packet, is planned. There's money in the city's budget this year for site planning work in both the harbor and the uplands that I think still need to be done. Quite a bit of work has been done already over the years, as evidenced by some of what you see posted here. So in short, we've got some recommended actions for the city council to consider And at this point, I think we ought to, continue a full-throated effort to spend some more time on land use and planning decisions for the cannery property, some design and some layout work with the public, involving the planning commission as well, and continue to work the financial end between now and the time the legislature meets next in early 2022. It might require the council to come up with some capital outlay before the legislature has finished its work and we have some idea of whether or not some funding is going to be coming from the state to help meet the local costs. But time is running out, but we do have some margin for getting this work done. The council can still schedule, if it wants, a bond issue for the public to consider again this October. I think that's going to be a little soon, and it'd be, I think, time better spent to work on the planning and site work, and then consider a special election for a bond issue if that's the route that council chooses to go for the breakwater match. There's also the option of waiting until next fall, although I think that's probably a little bit impractical unless the course process gets bogged way down. At any rate, I wanted to give you the background, sort of how I was thinking about this, and some suggested approaches, and be happy to try to answer questions about the logistical timing of this between the planning and financing.
In reading the memo, I like the second two bullet points. Continue to seek legislative appropriation and the combination funding method. And at any point in time, we can end up getting the money from the state, even if it's a 2-year run to pay ourselves back, I would think. So those are my two preferences on this. Spent 15 years doing this.
That approach appeals to me too. So it seems most,
Council for unanimous on it. Yeah, what we gotta do. Enough direction for you?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. New business, Craig Tribal Association, Cameron Point Land Allotment Request. Mr. Clinton.
Thank you. I stand, but it won't do no good. So back a couple months ago, I came before the city council, and thanks for your time. We were excited that the city is gonna move forward with some development on the cannery, and we thought Craig needs some sort of culture. We were lacking a culture center, and there's no perfect place than kind of where Craig got its roots down on Cannery Point. The tribal council is excited and willing to work with the city on a piece of lot adjacent to, maybe behind the existing web lot. Back towards maybe First Bank area somewhere to be able to establish a longhouse and some sort of museum. Of course, we can't really look at avenues of funding until we come up with agreement on that, but I've reached out to Rasmussen Foundation. Yeah, we're excited about the project. Sea Alaska Corporation is really excited about the project, as well as the Council of the Haida Nation, who is in south of us in Queen Charles on Haida Gwaii. I think it would be a perfect spot for one. If the city is willing to work with the tribe, on some sort of a lease. I know you guys won't probably, I know we don't want to necessarily want to buy it, but if you guys need some infrastructure monies, I don't think that's going to be out of the question of some sort of a lease. This is just beginning stages to start with land. You guys are going to work on it anyway. We're excited. So the proposal is, I was hoping by now we did some drone pictures. We're going to incorporate some sort of a 3D model of what we were thinking. That didn't get done by today. Gladly would like to bring that back to the next council meeting if it's done by then, to give you more of an idea of what kind of our goals are as the tribe. And I think the tribe has been a good community-based tribe in our city with allocations of money to streets, hardware for the communication efforts with the police stations and EMTs. And I look forward to it if it can become a reality. Thank you.
We're doing a concept drawing or approaching someone on getting something like that done here shortly. Right.
We are. There is, as I mentioned earlier, funding in the budget for some site planning work. And Brian and I are working on a request for proposals to solicit what's likely to be an architectural or an engineering firm to help with the layout of the tidelands and the uplands on the property. And so that'll be a community process, public meetings, gathering input, and something to the planning commission, something to the city council. And steps that we've kind of been through before, but sort of the next step in the process to try to get a little bit more detail on paper so that people can appreciate how things will take shape. I mean, there are a lot of demands listed up here, and it'll be not impossible, it'll just be a challenge, and probably time well spent working on how we're going to incorporate all the requests, including the one from CTA, into the land we have available. And so, yes, we're hoping to finalize. Brian's going to take the RFP to the Planning Commission for their suggestions, and then we'll publish it, hopefully have a contract awarded for this design and site planning work in late August. Thank you.
Good.
So this would be included then as part of the public process of further identifying how we might want to lay out possibility of different.
So, yes, and what we're thinking now is we've got input, lots of input already. And I said we've got all this that came from the public and the tribe's request, and the successful contractor would receive all that and be told to come up with this site plan for harbors and the uplands that accommodates as much of that as possible. They can incorporate their engineering experience and what they believe would be necessary for parking, access, utilities, all those kinds of things, and we see how all that looks in the space we have available. And ultimately, that'll come to you as the governing body of the city for some sort of additional input and some sort of affirmation.
Good.
Yeah, we really have to know what's gonna stay before we can commit to anything, so, but I think it's a really reasonable idea.
Yes.
I agree.
Well, you're the first choice. You know, there's other lands available, but like I said, that's where Craig started. You know, that's the history of how we started there, and it'd be the ultimate setting to have something there if it works as in layout. No engineers come and go, and they don't have much. When they leave, they're gone. Now this will be a place that we plan on keeping for a while. You know, we all live here for a reason, and I like the opportunity to work with the city on it. I really would. Thank you.
Yeah, just with the building would bring tourism over just to watch the longhouse be built there, I feel like.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I know that people come to watch the totem poles be carved and whatnot, so.
Yeah.
With the list of stuff that you're gonna give the site work to, is there like a number of, I know that there's the things like the parking lot and all the amenities that need to be included with the harbor that are the main points, but then like what the city and the tribes and everything want to add to it, is there like a numbering system on like what is more important than others, or are you just kind of letting the engineer or the architect draw something and then go from there?
No, I don't think that there's much prioritization, other than the fact that these points up here made it through the public review process, right? And so they have some broad support. The only thing I remember prioritizing was that we identified, or this process identified, 3 what we're gonna call prioritized buildings on the Cannery property, which I think is the admin building, the web loft, warehouse, yeah, and then the inventory. So those, we'll want the contractor to focus on the disposition of those, what the prospects are for them, current condition, and that process might actually require a little bit more intensive work than for the rest of the property. But other than that, I don't recall that any of these bulleted items were prioritized one over the other. It was an agglomeration of suggestions. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the number of potential uses far exceeds the available property.
Right.
Yeah.
And so most of the planning process has, to this point, kind of purposefully avoided picking one use over another specific use. What I really see as most valuable coming out of the contractor is not for the contractor to pick uses off of the list, or even for us to pick uses off of the list and have the contractor draw those, so much as once the contractor lays out the harbor support facilities, access and utility issues, it will start to show us what land is available at the end of that process. And at some point, regardless of what the contractor does in his planning process, the council will likely have to make some decisions about what number of uses will fit on the land that's available and how to prioritize them.
And then some of it can be combined too, right? Like, some of these buildings we're preserving could also be a museum, isn't it?
They can be, and we have.
And I'm sure the engineering firm will come up with ideas like that.
And we haven't determined to preserve any buildings yet. In fact, the question for, under this contract, is to do really a low-level look at the building to see what the viability of the options are. And if at that level, it looks like some may be viable for preservation, then it will be a completely separate process to have an engineer do a full condition assessment of the building and cost estimates. And ultimately, Julie, I would say that we're not likely to ask the engineer to even make decisions about what uses can be combined. But if, for example, the engineer says the web loft is in great shape and can be upgraded and renovated and restored for this amount of money, and we decide to pursue that, then really it's up to the city to look at the potential uses or advertise for uses. Mm-hmm. And if we can fit more than one use in a building, that's really up to the city. It's not really a question for the engineer so much as the question for the engineer is, at this point, those high priority buildings, the back of the envelope opinion on whether or not those buildings should continue to stand or not.
Yeah.
How we use them eventually will be up to the city through some process.
Gotcha.
They're getting pretty bad though, aren't they?
Yeah, I have my opinions on the buildings. And,
yeah, and a lot of them still have lead-based paint on them, and that's a whole nother.
And asbestos.
Yeah.
So that will be a whole other process. So this process that we're putting out for, requests for proposals for now really does not include a lot of those things, and a lot of those things have to be dealt with later on. So contamination of the property, asbestos in the buildings, lead paint in the buildings, that's a whole other process that we'll have to deal with, both for buildings that we demolish and any buildings that we potentially choose to keep. So, yeah, and none of that is included in what we're asking an architect or engineer to do under the current request for proposals that we're working on, but all of those will be
Added on.
pieces of the project later on.
Which will be coming back to the council for an update and probably additional funding to accomplish when the time comes.
Gotcha.
Okay, we beat that one up enough.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the Craig Cemetery discussion. You all know we're talking about putting up a mausoleum wall, or
Mhm.
I don't know a better term.
Mr. Mayor, there's just some long-term planning, I think, that needs to be done at the cemetery. The current layout of plots is nearly exhausted, either by actual interments or by reserved plots. Cremation to ashes is becoming, as you know, more and more prominent as compared to full body interments and burials. I gave a little history of the site. You have an idea of the dimensions and how much of the site is currently occupied by the developed part of the cemetery and how much is not. There's adjacent land that the city owns that can be incorporated into some sort of a design. In short, we need more plots laid out. Talk about the merits of a columbarium or some sort of structure for the interment of ashes. Policies about whether or not the city will accept ash burials in the plots or only in the columbarium, for example. Where all these things should go. Other improvements that we haven't considered that might need to be made. Just need to do some work on that. And we're prepared to start that. I wanted to, after talking with Tracy and Brian and other staff, Doug, wanted to clue the council in on what we're intending to do, and then take whatever input, if any, you have tonight with us as we begin this planning effort.
I'd like to add, at the writing of this memo, we had 7 spaces left, and we lost 1 already. So we're hurting for room.
We have the room for expansion,
Yes.
plus adding the wall with help.
Right, whatever we come up with, obviously we'll go through a planning process and bring it back to you for your approval and modification if need be. And hopefully some sort of an estimate of cost for whatever renovations are recommended and accepted by the council.
Which way would you look to expand?
Well, I don't, at first blush, understanding that this is just an initial thought, which would probably be improved by discussions with other people, is to try to do what we can in the developed area. And there's quite a bit, I think, that can be done there, but I'm not dead set against advancing farther south. I'm just not sure it's necessary. And it depends on the timeline we want to look at. We want to look down the road some distance, right? And I'm thinking off the top of my head 20 years, but maybe it's better to plan out 50, or maybe we should only go 10. I mean, that's all part of the discussion we'll have with the public and people that are interested in the project, which I'm sure there'll be a segment of the population that's genuinely interested in what happens at the cemetery and how it's expanded and the policies that are adopted by the council as part of the process. So, given that we own that adjacent property to the original 5 acres, I think there's some good options for creating new plots for full body burials without having to do much clearing. But honestly, Chanel, in a few months, I might feel differently about it after we've had some input.
Yeah.
Well, we also have a moratorium right now on taking any reservations, because we just simply don't have the plots for it right now, and so, we're just kind of holding our breath at the moment.
As Tracy suggested, we're gonna stop, take reservations. If someone comes in with a loved one who's passed away and they're preparing for burial, then we'll do what we can to accommodate them. But this business about gonna be dead in 20 years and want the spot, that'll have to wait, I think, until this planning process is done.
So John, what do you think is the best way to get started? Do you want to create a planning group, notify the public that we'll be doing some planning and seek public input? What's the best way to move
What
forward?
we'll do is we'll put up an ad saying, staff will get together, develop some kind of an outline, probably get a public notice ready, and just start meeting, get some drawings ready, like the drawing you see here. We
Yeah.
want to have a full-size one on the wall, and the public comes to talk about what their preferences are. Ultimately, I mean, Brian's going to spearhead the effort as the planner, but I can see a series of public meetings, the planning commission approval to the council, and that will be the basis for, like I said already, considering appropriations for the budget year that starts July of next year.
Okay.
Getting funding ready for that. Actually, there is a little bit of funding available potentially this year at the council. Doug's got $25,000 that he asked for planning and implementation work for both the cemetery and the entrance to the Thibodeau Field area as well. So we'll have to divide that money up. For the real earnest projects in earnest, like maybe a columbarium or some other work, we'll probably be back asking for additional funding, but next fiscal year.
Have you guys contacted people that have bought in plots in the past, that are just sitting vacant at the moment?
I've attempted to contact one couple that used to live here, that reserved spot, to see if they were still interested in maintaining the space, and they have not responded.
Yeah, because I know like even in Ketchikan, there's some plots that have gone quite a few years without being used. Like my grandparents had bought plots and they're still just vacant over there because everyone either gets cremated or something like that, so.
We'll be looking for input on this from the public and from the council. Alrighty, moving on. Consider appointment of 2021 election judges and set compensation for such judges.
Move to appoint actually not Sherwoman, Karen Coffey, Bill Wody, and Brian Templin as 2021 municipal election judges. And second and further approve stipends of $200 for the chairwoman judge, and approve a stipend of $150 each for participating election judges, and approve a stipend of $100 for each participating relief worker election judge.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to do all that stuff Mike said. Too much to list there.
No, I want to say, I think we've been very fortunate for many, many years. We have some very dedicated and very professional, responsible people that run our elections. And, they've done a very good job for us, and in light of the atmosphere we see today, I really appreciate the work they do.
I agree.
It's pretty tough dealing with all that.
Especially last year with all the COVID protocols on top of it. So yeah, they did really good, and I'm glad to see. I think that's the same crew for the most part. Tracy, what you want to?
Any vote on this?
The voice vote, or you can just direct staff.
Any more discussion on it? Yeah. Just direct staff.
Actually, your motion is on
Yeah,
the
you
floor.
did make a motion.
Yeah.
Let's vote on it.
Mhm.
Do voice vote or?
Use the voice.
All in favor of this?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Thank you, Council.
Moving on to Charles Melendez's trailer discussion.
I was the one that brought this up and asked to have it added, and it helped me to read the history because it came to my attention out of the blue and I didn't know anything about it. So looks like the city's been very diligent with it. I was very satisfied to see. I think it's all been handled very well, and I'm satisfied with what's in the memo.
Talk to Doug's crew, and their plan is to start work the next week or the week after.
Perfect.
Get the site cleaned up.
Yeah, I see somebody did a little bit of work on there. I heard it was city staff already just kind of picked the lumber up and arranged it so it isn't just like pickup sticks, so it's a little bit better. And yeah, we've went the extra mile here with patience and I'm comfortable moving forward.
Yeah.
And I've shared this with Doug's staff, but I'll just make sure not to overbuild expectations. Our goal is to make it safe, not to make it pretty.
Yeah.
And so the amount of work that we've done is probably less than what a lot of people would like to see. The public works staff or the parks and facility staff, the direction that I've given them is to essentially take down all of the leaning timber, pile everything up so it's not like pickup sticks, and to make any nails or screws on the ends of the board safe. But they won't be doing a general cleanup of the site and removing boards from the site.
But what about the actual structure?
We won't be doing anything with the trailer.
Because that trailer is, I mean, if a kid crawls in that thing or something, that thing's, I went over and saw it, and I'm certainly no expert on structural safety of buildings, but it looked, I thought the plan was to remove the actual trailer.
It's not our property.
Can't remove it.
But
Well,
he's been notified since 2017 or something and hasn't done anything. And it's I mean, I don't know, I mean, it's, the city has, I mean, I would just imagine the city would have zoning and this and that. We can't just allow something to sit there that would be unsafe.
I mean, then we have to go through all of them. There's that one right by the harbor too, that's that old building.
Dimmer property.
Well, there's the Demert one, and then there's the one just
Jim
right down the ballpark road on that side.
Jim Dennis's.
Yeah, I mean, then we can't just focus on one person's property. And I know that Ketch King and Mr. Melendez have had a big fight about their lodge there and his trailer being there and being an eyesore or having him live there and stuff so close to the lodge. And this has been an ongoing battle, but yeah, I feel
I mean, the eyesore thing I'm not as concerned about. The safety is what has me concerned. There's exposed wires there. I don't know if they're hooked up to anything or not.
they're like that with a lot of old buildings around here. You just gotta parent your child not to crawl into old buildings more so.
It didn't work for me when I was 13 or 14.
Yeah.
But we all survived, right?
How many fires they had at the cannery.
I mean, does the city have any liability if a child crawls in there and gets hurt or something? Or an adult? Do we have any
It's
liability?
like the old saying, anybody can sue anybody for anything. The fact that we're not an owner of the property or of the trailer would, on its face, sort of limit whatever sort of liability we have. On the other hand, the city does have the authority, as Brian has explained in this memo, to conduct condemnation proceedings, which could include removing things like the trailer if it's determined through the public process to be a hazard or a nuisance. And so someone might say, well, you failed to act on what you should have perceived to be a problem. It's kind of a long shot, right? But it's a possibility. I think if we have liability, it's a pretty thin reed between whatever might happen there and the city being responsible. Because we have condemnation authority.
I will add in a lot of the discussions that we've had on how to proceed with some of the condemnation proceedings, is we don't have building inspector staff available. And we don't have anyone who can document electrical problems or structural problems to the extent that we would protect the city's interests by going in and demolishing structures or removing structures. There is a process in the Uniform Code for the Abatement of Dangerous Buildings that allows for that, but it generally ties it to having an expert do an evaluation of the structure and from an engineering standpoint, be able to document the unsafe conditions and how to make them safe.
Has the city ever condemned buildings in here? And
Not in the 17 years that I've been in the office. I don't know about before that, but I'm not aware of any.
We did one after it fell in the harbor.
Well, yeah.
And, yeah,
I don't know one of those.
the Blue Float House, we worked,
Mac wants us.
but that was on city property.
And the process was different. Blue Float House, we were concerned about it falling apart and floating into the Crab Bay. And so we warned the property owner that he would be cited under the littering code. And in the end, the property owner signed the float house over to the city. And so then it was our property to remove. That's not likely to happen in this case.
Actually, we did do one other one on this side, right behind City Shop too.
Float house?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
But those again.
That was
we
more,
got-
sorry.
I'm sorry. I said those again, we got ownership of through a legal process.
Plus we own the tidelands, so we
Right.
can do a forcible entry and
Right.
detainer action in
Right.
court.
That's true.
Mike?
I would have one potential request on the trailer. I'm not suggesting we can move it or force that. I do think it's appropriate to see if it's accessible.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the United States was suddenly and deliberately attacked by Empire of Japan.
So that
We will gain
that
the
temptation.
inevitable triumph. So
I mean, there's a
help
giant
us
hole.
God.
You can crawl right through the front door.
Then that should be, that's what I'm suggesting. We should make sure it's secured so that kind of temptation isn't there. I think that's appropriate personally.
Yeah, we have to buy a sheet of plywood and screw it over top of it and.
Right.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. And I'll probably have the police present and make that attempt.
We don't wanna,
Just have them videotape
Yeah.
it, so.
don't wanna overstep our boundaries though, cause then they could get upset about us singling them out once again for certain things like that.
Yeah, but if the other ones aren't accessible, at least this one,
They
we're gonna
are,
end up having a homeless person go in there, if not a kid, and get drunk and burn himself up or something. I mean,
I know quite a few of the other ones are accessible too. I just wanna make sure that we're not trying to single people out here. I know that it's
Hello?
more
Hello?
closely visible and an area where people.
Higher traffic for sure.
Yeah, but,
There's a lot of businesses down there, a lot of foot
right,
traffic.
I mean, people
Not a
could,
lot, but some.
you imagine if we like did something to the building and they came back and had sentimental value, or you never know what somebody could sue you over.
Well, I agree, but we've been attempting since 2017. I mean,
No,
diligently.
Has he responded since then? I know he did a while back, but.
Yeah,
He did.
go ahead, Jim.
I was gonna say he did, he responded, Jim Dunbar was on a trip and stopped in and talked to him, and I think we received a letter after that.
When
Yeah.
was that?
I've seen more than one letter in creative language and theories applicable to the city of Craig, so they haven't been very helpful.
They weren't helpful letters.
Was that like in 2019? Was that what I saw?
One end of the year.
I don't either. So it would have been 2018, 2019, somewhere in that. Somewhere in that time.
I know.
Yeah, well, we were trying to touch base with him, and we finally did. I don't recall any correspondence coming in from him after we started the formal date.
Yes.
I do think it's reasonable to secure the place. It would also be reasonable to send them, give them a 30-day notice to do so, or 15-day, or whatever, some kind of short notice. If they don't do it, then we can do it, and, you know, we've tried to cover both sides of that equation.
Brian's picked up pretty good on contacting him, making him aware of what we're doing.
My understanding is that he's in poor health and you're not being in a good condition to respond anyway, especially time.
Sounds like it's his son that's kind of doing the corresponding for him. All of a sudden. You know, the last thing I'll say on this is, you know, the city's obviously trying to reach out and make an effort, so I don't think that I want to.
Okay. We'll reach out to him one more time and tell him we're gonna clean it up, so.
You mean remove it?
I think just clean it up and make sure
I thought
it's
they were
not
cleaning it up
accessible.
already.
So the authority is already, go ahead, Brian. You're more in the line.
Yeah, I have to go back and read the abatement order again that I published. We may have the authority to secure the door in what we've already issued. We certainly have the authority to clean up the timbers in what we've already issued. And I think the language, and I'm sorry I don't have it with me, but the notice of abatement that was reported, I think gives us some additional authority. I'll double check to do that. I think if it does, which I believe it does, we can do that without contacting Mr. Melendez.
We can probably take some action that's incidental to the authority we have already.
I mean, I'm only one council member, but I personally think it should be removed. I feel like and I know there's other places too, but this one has been brought to our attention by the public more than once. It's right next to, you know, where a lot of people traffic. And again, I'm just one person, so if everybody else disagrees, that's fine. I'd like to see the trailer removed. I think that's just the safest course for the city.
And that also puts us in another category where other people are gonna let their buildings get so condemned to where they want. They'll just wait for the city to remove it to where it's the city's money.
No, we get to
Well,
charge them.
Well, charge them, but is he gonna pay?
Put on their property tax, and then if they don't pay the
If they
property
don't pay it,
tax,
then you
then
seize the property.
we can go through the process to seize the property.
It's their option.
If this was the first, we had notified him right here and now, I'd be with you on the 30 days, clean it up, let's see what happens. But this began in 2017.
Been a long time.
I mean, it's
It's not
2021.
that far along. 2017, that's not that far. If it was like 2000.
We were looking at over 4 years
There's,
of noticing from, I mean, if I get a letter from the city, I'd be responding in a week. But, you know, again, health situations and stuff, but still, it's been 4 years. I don't know, that, again, I'm just one person, but I went and looked at it and that was my opinion.
It's pretty gross. Like Joni talked to me, I went down and looked at it a long time ago.
I never noticed it before.
I'm not saying that I don't want it cleaned up. I'm just saying that, once again, it's hard to just single out.
As soon as somebody else complains about one of the other places, then we probably would look at it.
Yeah.
If we haven't received a complaint about it, then what are we supposed to do?
And it's not the eyesore factor, because then you become an HOA like they have in Florida, where they don't like the color of your flower pots. I don't want to go that route. It's not the eyesore, it's the safety thing that has me concerned. If somebody's just complaining that it looked ugly, I'd be like, well, it's Craig, Alaska. Not everything here is aesthetically pleasing, but this is, in my mind, a safety thing with a tenant that's not, for years now, not willing to do anything about it.
I'm surprised it's still there with the wind.
Yeah.
Surprised there's a.
Could that go into the water too? Is it I didn't look close enough. Could that go into the water too? That structure?
Underneath it, I think that.
To the back, like if it was blown? I don't know. I don't know the ways the winds blow and all that stuff. But
And that Demmer house looks like it's gonna fall into the water.
I don't
too.
even know which one that is.
I don't know how you could miss that one.
On the way
Well,
to
there's one
Chapel
that's in the
on
water.
Yeah.
9th Street,
Mac wants us to burn that one.
Oh, the machine
the
shop.
ones that are on the water on North
Got
Cove.
too happy about that.
So if you're walking down North Cove, they're on the left,
Uh-huh.
over the water.
Oh,
It's the-
okay.
Across from Thibodeau.
It's
Yeah.
behind Larry Demmert's
Yeah.
house, it's the machine, it was a machine shop. Oh,
What?
Where the ramp in North Cove used to be if you're a local.
I don't know. I think starting to just clean it up, I guess, like make sure the boards and nails and stuff aren't in the way is a good thing. I mean, it's showing the people that are complaining that we are trying to do something without overstepping. I don't know.
We'll proceed. Anyway, council comments or? Like,
One, I did talk to Marcus 2 days ago, can I give you a rundown, kind of what the financial makeup of, Big Alliance is, his seafood company, his health company. There's a small percentage of straw money, there's a number of other investors as well. I was pretty clear with him how I felt about trawlers, but I also see this continuing to be a potential, something long-term if it's done appropriately. Could be a real asset for the island, for our community, so I would not be opposed to continuing to, work with this, development request and support for it. It wouldn't take one small percentage, it's one thing, tax a project, but I didn't know how to feel about trawlers.
yeah. Let him know. This was a request more by Robert, right, Venables, to deal with.
Right, the proposal you saw with the Southeast Conference letterhead was a project that Robert's working on that's sort of more broad-based on mariculture.
Yeah.
It's not just focused on what's happening in the
With Marcus,
Craig.
yeah. It's a broad-based thing, but yeah. Okay.
Another thing I wanted to bring up, I don't know if anybody else has noticed on the water and stuff, but I don't know what kind of kelp they're growing in the kelp farms, but is it an invasive species of kelp? I don't know, I feel like there's more like slimy kelp appearing around and stuff. Like some of the boats have told me that some of the, like they've been seeing a lot more different kelps around on their boats and things. I'm not sure, but I just figured I'd bring it to the council's attention.
I believe everything he's growing there is native, it's local kelp.
Yeah.
There's no invasive.
There's a slime problem all over this year, for some really, really bad
Yeah.
on the other side, way worse than here.
Yeah, a lot in like the creek and stuff.
So part of the grading for his farm is first, to begin with, all the kelp that he is raising is locally, it's endemic to the area. And the seed for the farm has to come from within 50 miles of the farm, so that even if you were growing the same kind of kelp in the farm that maybe grows, say, up by Admiralty, you couldn't get the seed that far away. It has to, there's some pretty stringent requirements for how he has to propagate the species that he's growing there, and it has to be endemic to the area. So the Fish and Game, they're looking out, DEC, they're looking out to not create the kind of issue you're
Right.
concerned about, which is appropriate.
Yeah.
Invasive issues.
Yeah, no, I
I didn't know that about the
from-
50 mile, that's great.
Yeah, that's good to know, so that I can inform people when they bring it up.
So I think the intent of this farm, or, this facility where they wanted to raise it, is they probably would try to generate seed right from the area, which would be better, so.
Yeah.
They only have to get that initial startup for seed, and after that, then they culture their own. So it's just going out one time and getting basically one flower. And then they have to start, and from then on, it's all stuff that they're gonna grow in that building they're wishing to put up. they'll cultivate their own seed and mass produce it. So, and they're not gonna be going out and gathering anymore, and it's all gonna be from this area, local, so shouldn't be an issue. Anyway, anything else? Nelly, you ain't got nothing?
I'll move to adjourn.
No? It's a good point. All in favor of that?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
I think it's unanimous.